Hey, football fans, welcome back to another episode of Lions Latest, the show where we gather around and talk about the greatest team in the NFL, the Detroit Lions. I'm your host, Bryan Hanes, and we have a great list of topics to get into today, so let's start talking about them. You'll notice my voice is a little shot, but that won't stop us from getting into today's video. So, we're talking about training camp predictions right now, specifically for the receivers of Detroit. I know there's a whole bunch of positions we got to look at for these training camps, but I think right now the receiving core is something worth talking about, especially with some additions we made in the draft. And as the it goes on, we'll talk about more just what's going on with the training camp. So we'll have a lot more to talk about once they actually begin. So let's talk about it right now. St. Brown and Williams are returning from 1,000-yard seasons. Patrick and Raymond are those proven veteran playmakers. They're back, and it's going to be interesting to watch how quickly the rookie Tesla comes along and see if he can push Patrick and Raymond in some of these reps as we see him go throughout these camps. He's got those terrific side speed, able to catch under pressure and in tough situations like we talked about in one of our previous videos. So he'll definitely be someone to watch in these camps. I think something to really keep an eye out is St. Brown, how he's a top 5 receiver right now in the game. He's in his prime. He's only one other player in the NFL, Michael Thomas, has more receptions than St. Brown through their first 4 seasons in the league. So St. Brown has been off to a crazy start. He's now in his prime. He's got knowledge of being in this league for a little bit now and kind of understanding what it takes. And he's been consistently great. Consistent is the big word to use here. He's been consistent. And that's what you got to really look for in a great player. You'll have one player who has a fantastic season, but if they can't help your team for more than a season, they're not a cornerstone of that team. Williams is poised for a breakout season like we talked with John Morton's first season as offensive coordinator. We know about how Williams had a terrific spring, both on the field and the meeting room. Him and the coaches are really excited to see what they can do with him, and he's going to be featured a lot this year. Last season, by the numbers, 50-yard plus receptions for Williams. He had 5 of them. He tied Terry McLaurin and Brian Thomas Jr. For the NFL lead. Williams also averaged 17.3 yards per reception. There was only 6 total dropped passes from Lions receivers last year. That was the lowest number in the NFL and represented only 1.2% of Jared Goff's catchable passes. Detroit ranked 4th in the NFL last season for third down conversion rates, having a 47.6%. Only Tampa Bay, Kansas City, and Baltimore were better. And then games with at least 5 receptions for St. Brown, 49. So the receivers of Detroit definitely have a big year ahead of them, and these camps will definitely see and show us what is going to be possible and what's going to be different. I don't know if anything's going to be like crazy different, but we might see these crazy improvements from some players that we've been wanting, like Tim Patrick might come out and just be a dog. We know he's a dog, but he might come out and just blow our expectations away. Tesla might be, one of those guys who really encourages and helps motivate the other receivers to get their stuff going. If he can be a crazy player, everyone wants to get reps and you don't want the rookie taking your reps away. So he can definitely be a player mentally and on the field physically. I think we're going to see a lot more once it starts, obviously, but just keep in mind right now that the receivers of Detroit have a lot going for them. Moving on to our second topic, speaking of receivers still, how will the season look for St. Brown? Let's focus on St. Brown for a second. So I think he's going to have 120 receptions. That'll be a career number of receptions. I think he'll have 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns. So those are some big asks. 1,300 yards, 14 touchdowns is a huge ask from him. Why do I think it's possible? So I think it's possible just because he's an animal. He's a dog. He is our number 1 receiver on the team. And now Jared Goff's coming out of this season where they fell so short. So they were so close to getting where they needed to be, and they just had a bad game. Injuries, were really a key factor. And now I think we have everything in the right spot. We have all the players we want, right? Not necessarily that we need, but we could always get more. But we're in a position now where if we keep ourselves healthy, we have this drive to go out and win now, because last season was like almost ripped away from us. Fantasy football wise, Brown's a top 5 receiver in fantasy football PPR leagues, just because of the amount of receptions he gets and his ability to run after the catch is insane. Keep in mind though, however, he did undergo knee surgery this offseason, but is cleared and ready for mini camps. And with a new wide receiver from the draft, Tesla might take some of those targets. Also, Jameson Williams being introduced and included as bigger part of the offense might reduce his targets. So there's that to worry about. But I think St. Brown is honestly nowadays in his prime. He's got such a good idea of his position in the NFL and how, the coverage is working. And now they have a new offensive coordinator who is holding his passing and receive, like he was the passing game coach over in Denver, like we mentioned. So we have someone who's like really big on passing. I think St. Brown will be one of those weapons that get used a bunch. Uh, his touchdowns last year increased, and I think they'll only continue to increase. I know 14 is pretty crazy to ask, especially with 1,300 yards on 120 receptions. But I think for a guy like him, he's a superstar. I think he could absolutely do it. Let's look at his stats real quick. 2022, he had 106 catches for 1,161 yards. 11 yards on average. He had a 49 long on his biggest catch, 6 touchdowns, and 95 rushing yards. In 2023, he had 119 receptions for 1,515 yards. He had 12.7 averaged catching yards. Longest was 70, so a huge increase on his longest there, getting downfield more. And then 10 touchdowns, and he had 24 rushing yards. Last year, 115 receptions, so 4 less receptions, but had 1,263 yards, so a little less on yards. He averaged 11 per game. His long was 66, but then he had 12 touchdowns. He's become one of those red zone targets, and that's what I'm saying with 14 touchdowns is doable. He's become a target now where that we see the toe tap, we see the way he can get open just in general. Like he's going to be a red zone demon this year, and you can call him a slot merchant, but if being a slot merchant means you get a ton of touchdowns and a ton of receiving yards, I mean, I guess, right? I think he's going to absolutely be a huge role player. And I think 120 receptions is not out of the question for him. It's one more than is already his highest. And for, again, like I say, for a guy like that, he could absolutely hit it, no problem, in my opinion. We're just going to have to worry about. I'm not worried that knee surgery is going to be any big problem. If he's ready to go for mini camps, then he'll have plenty more time to get ready for the future. And speaking of these other targets, JMO's mainly you look downfield. He's going to be down the field. St. Brown will get more receptions than JMO just because of how much more open he is, like on average. And then with Tesla, yeah, he's going to be one of those other targets, but I don't think he's necessarily replacing St. Brown in any capacity. St. Brown still has the number one slot position, and he's the number one receiver on our team. So there's no really, we shouldn't be worried that Goff's just going to forget about St. Brown. They have that crazy connection. I actually like how connected they are, the way they play. They have that synergy that you like to see in a receiver and a quarterback. Because when you have a great receiver and a great quarterback, but you can kind of tell they're not always on the same page, it's really frustrating. And that's why I'm really glad we have someone like those two. You can really tell when they're on the same page and they're locked in a game, you got nothing to worry about. When they're locked in, they're locked in. And synergy on the team is fantastic. We saw stuff like that with Darnell Mooney, Kirk Cousins, two kind of more random players. But when they locked in and they had the understanding of what each other were going to do, they were crazy last year, right? Despite them not necessarily being star players in any capacity, they still had really good games together because of that ability. And I think I see that to an even greater extent with a superstar like St. Brown and a superstar like Jared Goff. So with that being said, let's move on to our third topic. Speaking of Goff, Goff being a part of Detroit and its future. So just a little tidbit on Goff here. Just pay some respects to the man. He was traded to the Lions back in 2021 after the Rams acquired Matthew Stafford. He spoke recently on the quarterback show in Netflix, where he's featured about the lack of communications from the Rams coaching staff, particularly Sean McVay, the head coach, regarding the trade, which left him feeling, in his words, betrayed, and it was an immature transaction. McVay has gone on to admit that he regrets how the situation was handled and wish it was handled better, which, good professionalism there and way to be accountable, all that good stuff. But Goff just took this trade as a fresh chance for him and a new opportunity to prove himself when he really was just told you're not good enough as a first round draft pick, which I can only imagine hurts. Yep. So he thrives in Detroit. He led the Lions to their first division title in 30 years and a near Super Bowl appearance for 2 years in a row. I think right there shows that he understood he was being sent here basically to quote unquote die, like for his career to just freeze up. And he just went no and put his head down, realized the opportunity that he had with a new head coach, new GM, Like there was a new culture and a new system that was going to be built, and he was going to be the guy that they built it around. So he, instead of just being sad or feeling bad for himself, he just decided to give it his 100%, give it his all, and make it his own. And that's what he's done. The enthusiastic chants of Jared Goff from the Lions fans, which I love, demonstrate that he's got that strong connection forged with the city, right? He loves Detroit. He's gone on to say, like, you go from Los Angeles to Detroit, it's a huge difference. But he's absolutely like, he's a part of Detroit. The city embraces him. The city, is proud to have Jared Goff. I remember in the first year, the first couple of years, the Goff fence and how everyone was like, oh, it's just gonna same old Lions, like nothing's gonna change. And then once they shook off the dust and we got some more weapons for him and a good old line, like we could really see what he can do when he's got the right pieces. We ask so much of our quarterbacks when they got nothing to work with, and now he had something to work with, and he really showed why he was a first round draft pick. He recently signed a 4-year contract extension with us for 212 million, making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. The deal signed in May of 2024 includes 170.6 million guaranteed money and averages 53 million per year. This extension solidifies Goff's position as the Lions' starting quarterback and keeps him with us through the 2028 season. So I'm excited. I mean, I'm happy, right? Pay the man his money. He showed up and did what we asked him to do and what Lions fans have wanted for 30 years. So you can't be mad at the guy. Losing in the playoffs sucks, but it's not his fault. And I think it's just great that he said that being traded to Detroit was the best thing that's ever happened for him. Like, even his wife talks about how supportive the community is and how it's just a great change for them. Now they're starting a family here. They're about to have a kid. Jared Goff's going to be a dad, which, being in the league and being a dad at the same time, he's going to get so much sleep. I'm so worried for him, but I'm not worried if that's going to impact his performance at all. I think he's got to have that dad strength now, and we're going to really see a great season out of Jared Goff. We've got to keep an eye on him this season. I think he's an absolutely solid guy to have on the team, and he's just embraced the city of Detroit, and I think you can't say enough about him. Moving on to our last topic, we're talking about the Lions and if they're still going to be a powerhouse this year. Is Dan Campbell enough? Is Detroit past its prime? But it's considered to be that way from some analysts. And is the Super Bowl window already starting to close for us? Was Ben Johnson the main success for the team? I think Dan Campbell absolutely had a bigger part to play than people give him credit for. He respects his players on and off the field, and in doing so, they respect him. Multiple players come out to speak on his unique style and why they want to run through a brick wall for him. They highlight his leadership, his emotional intelligence, his ability to foster a strong team culture out of a team that has a very poor history. They appreciate his honesty, his transparency, and the genuine care for them as individuals rather than how many points they can throw up for him that week. Players like Jared Goff, like we just mentioned, emphasizes his emotional intelligence as a key leadership trait. Other players like Brian Branch express that he inspires them to perform at their best. Like, when you got a guy that you want to run through a brick wall for, your body will do things that it wouldn't normally do because you want to do it for somebody else. Even after a difficult loss, Campbell takes responsibility and shows vulnerability, which resonates with the players. This reinforces the idea that he's not just focused on winning, but also building a strong and resilient team. And while winning is very important, let's be honest, Lions fans, we love winning. Keeping a squad together through the tough times so we can continue to be great is just as important. I think even with the changes, we will continue to be a powerhouse. I think we haven't lost enough players to call it a team collapse, and that Super Bowl window is very much still open for us. Our best players are currently in their primes. We have a coach who is consistently giving it his all for these guys, and the culture has never been better for this organization. I don't see us falling back to the same old Lions anytime soon. And finally, since this has finally been a place where players want to come to play now, I see consistency in the next 10 years. I see stability. Like, we're not just going to have these like super highs and then super low lows right away. And I think we're going to have a lot better fall seasons for the city of Detroit coming up. That was just a quick little tidbit. I just wanted to mention how, a lot of people are saying, Ben Johnson was the reason you guys even succeeded in the first place. Don't get your hopes up this season. A lot of analysts have us going under 10 wins now. I think, honestly, that's not the case. Dan Campbell may not be the X and O's guys like Ben Johnson was, but he's got some of those other traits that you just can't, teach somebody. And having a guy like him that can build people around him that are right for the culture is fantastic. So with that being said, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for listening to Lions Latest. I've been your host, Bryan Hanes. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. If you made it to this point of the video, let me know what you think about this season. Are we still considered a powerhouse, and how soon do we have for that Super Bowl window? Let me know what you guys think. I've loved the comments. I've loved all your guys' support. It makes me smile when I see you guys getting hyped for Detroit, and you guys are just making this much worthwhile. So thank you so much. You have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.